It is a pleasure to welcome you to this Angel Investor Tax Credit info session featuring Cheryl Sadeli of the Massachusetts Life Sciences Center. I'm Karen Utgoff. I'm the Director of Venture Development here at the Institute for Applied Life Sciences, and I'm always delighted to talk about our startups. But this morning, we're going to talk about the other side of the equation. Just a reminder, we are being recorded, and please save your questions until the end or put them in the chat as they occur to you so that we can circle back to them when Cheryl is done. And now I'm going to turn it over to Cheryl and the Massachusetts Life Sciences Center. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Karen. Good morning, everyone. We are certainly happy to be here today to share with you that our Angel Investor Tax Credit Program is now open and accepting applications. This is the first program at the center that directly benefits an individual investor. It was passed by legislation and we finally got it off the ground last year. So this is the second round of the program. We will share some high-level information with you today about the results of the last year, the pilot round, and what we hope to see for this second round of the program. Okay. We have quite a bit to cover, but before I jump in, for those of you who are not familiar with who we are as a center, we're about a 13-year-old economic development agency tasked with strengthening the state's life sciences ecosystem. We do that by running various programs via grants, loans, and tax incentives, such as this program, to support innovation, of course, R&D, certainly commercialization, and manufacturing activities in life sciences. In addition to directly supporting companies, we also have a very robust workforce development initiative. Our college internship program have supported over 4,500 internships over the years at 285 or more different startups over the last 10 years since we first ran the program. In the end, our ultimate goal here as a center is to try and fill as many funding gaps in the ecosystem as possible, serving as the hub of our ecosystem and continue to make the state a robust place for life sciences companies to stay and grow. If you are interested in learning more about the center, our programs, and what we can do to help, we invite you to check out our website, masslifesciences.com, or contact myself, and Karen can also refer. We work very much in partnership with the UMass system. Follow up with us after the info session. Now, by our statutory definition, the term life sciences has the following meaning, and the statute also stated a few examples of what types of sectors would fall under our life sciences umbrella. So really anything from biopharma, diagnostics, med device, and these days, digital health would also qualify, with the caveat that the technology solutions that the companies are developing must directly relate to human health. If you have questions on whether or not your company or a company that you're considering investing in would be considered a life sciences company under our statute, please feel free to contact us as well. The best way to contact us with that type of question is using email to angeltax@masslifesciences.com. And of course, we will provide you with that information at the end, along with the slide materials as well. Okay, like I said earlier, the regulation for this program was published last summer by the Massachusetts Department of Revenue. The goal is, of course, to spur angel investments in life sciences startups located everywhere, all across the state. This program is jointly run by MLSC and the Mass Department of Revenue. We do not have the funds in-house since this is a tax credit program. The center's role is program administration. We run the application process, review the material submitted to make sure we satisfy all the eligibility criteria. And ultimately, what we do at the center is we made the award decision and compliance monitoring after the award. We will communicate with DOR directly, and once they have the awards listing from us, their role is really to manage the tax credit process and throughout the duration of the 3 years, whether if there's a recapture that is needed. So last year's pilot round, we were able to award 39 angel investors, almost $474,000 of incentives in connection with approximately $4.3 million worth of investments into 19 different companies. There were 10 investors who made investments in companies located in gateway cities, which is great. Regionalization and enabling companies to grow outside the greater Boston is one of our key priorities. So we're happy to see that about a quarter of the investors who applied for this program last year were in alignment with that as well. And hopefully this round we can do more, and certainly in Western Massachusetts as well. From the qualifying business perspective, last round, the investments made in conjunction with the Angel Investors Program benefited 19 companies. Majority are located in Cambridge and Boston and are in the medical device sector. Companies have an average size of 5 full-time employees, and our highlight of the statistic from last year is that nearly 50% of the companies are women or minority-led companies. So that's something that we're very proud of. And again, hopefully for the second round, we can continue that trajectory. If you'd like to learn more about last year's round, we've recently published a formal announcement for that. You should be able to see it on our website if you just search in the search box and see the names of the companies who are associated with the investments. The individual investor names are not publicized as part of the announcement. I'll pause here before we get into the information about this year's round and eligibility information and so forth, and see if there are any questions about MLSC in general.
So Cheryl, there's a question in the chat from Punish. He just making sure that this covers diagnostics as well as therapeutics. Is that correct?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Thanks.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Moving on then, for this year's round of angel investor tax credit, the general rules or the concept of the program are as follows. First, a taxpayer investor making a qualifying investment in a qualifying business may be allowed a credit up to an amount of 20% of the qualifying investment. If the qualifying business is located in a gateway municipality, the credit may be increased to up to 30%. The credit can only be claimed on your individual tax return. So for this round, you will be applying for credits relating to investments that you made during the calendar year 2021. And you will need to claim that next year on your 2021 tax return. It is not refundable, but you can carry it forward for 3 years. One caveat to remember is that if the business ceases to have its principal place of business in Massachusetts within the 3 years, there is a recapture provision, so you will have to refund the credit. In the next few slides, I will go over the eligibility criteria. of what constitutes a taxpayer investor, a qualifying investment, and a qualifying business, and a little bit more detail of the program as well as the application process. These eligibility criteria are extracted word per word from the regulation, and so hopefully it'll streamline the process as you will read it. You can use the slides as we will send it afterwards as sort of like a checklist, as well as we made the links available there for the documents that you will need for the application process. So, okay. First one is the eligibility criteria as a taxpayer investor. You must be an accredited investor as defined by the SEC, and you must not be the principal owner of the qualifying business or work in the qualifying business as a full-time professional activity. As part of the application process, we will require you to submit a letter from either a CPA or a lawyer to attest to these facts to verify your eligibility requirement. We have a sample letter of what that letter looks like in a template, which you can download directly from the application. Lastly, you do not have to be a Massachusetts resident, but seeing as the only way to claim the credit is by filing a Massachusetts tax return, you would need to have some income that is subject to tax in the state. In terms of the qualifying business, your principal place of business must be in Massachusetts with at least half of the employees working there. If the business, the business must have 20 employees or fewer at the time of the investment and has a federal tax ID number, have an equal or less than 500,000 dollars of gross revenues in the fiscal year prior to claiming eligibility. So again, for this 2021 round of the program, the business must make less than 500,000 in 2020. And gross revenues mean all revenues in this instance. So this does include grant revenues as well. And lastly, and this is the bullet point that most businesses get hung up on during the application process last year, is that they must have a fully developed business plan that includes all appropriate long-term and short-term forecasts and contingencies of business operations, including research and development, profit and loss and cash flow projections, and details of the angel investor funding. Most of the time, what we see is that the business plan submitted did not quite address all of the criterias, which requires a follow-up from us. We have updated our application to include a sample of what a basic financial models look like that includes a cash flow projection. And so we really have updated our application process with sort of samples and templates if people are interested in using that. And lastly, the eligibility criteria regarding the investment is that it needs to be a monetary investment that is at risk and is not secured or guaranteed. So certainly equity investments are acceptable. And these days investors are using SAFE as well, the simplified agreement for equity. Those are also acceptable. And for our program purpose, we consider convertible notes to be acceptable as well, as long as they ultimately convert to equity. If the note gets paid back instead, then it would be one of those instances where it would be a recapture for the program. A direct loan, of course, would not be eligible. This program is structured as an annual program. And so for, again, this round, the eligibility of the investment must be during calendar year 2021. And the business must use the investment for things like capital improvements, plant and equipment, R&D, and working capital. And lastly, since this is an angel investor tax credit program, the money used for this investment must come directly from angel investors' own funds so that they can claim it on their own individual tax return. There is a clause that allows certain pass-through entities to be eligible to participate under this program, such as an angel group. And the angel group would have to apply as a whole as the taxpayer investor, and the group must then satisfy the taxpayer investor eligibility criteria, which essentially all the individual angels who participated must then be accredited investors and cannot work or own the business. And the credit would then be prorated to the members of the group and passed through to be claimed on each of their individual tax return. And again, since the qualifying investment criteria slide right before this, you just heard me say that the investment must be made from Angel's own direct funds. This pass-through entity clause would exclude funding from the following type of entities, such as VCs. Okay. I know that was quite a bit on the eligibility. So Karen, I will pause here and take any questions if there are any regarding eligibility for the program.
We do have a couple, and I'm going to ask the people who asked them to unmute and clarify. First of all, Shelley Amster has asked, are virtual companies eligible? Shelley, can you unmute and explain what you mean by a virtual company?
Well, one that doesn't have a bricks and mortar facility that's working remotely completely, no labs, everything's outsourced.
That's an interesting one, and I think it's certainly something that is more of a trend these days. Let me get back to you on that one. Let me just circle back. I'm thinking that as long as the headquarters is in Massachusetts and all of the employees who are working are, even though they're working remotely, are in Massachusetts, it could be fine. But let me circle back with you on that.
And when you talk about equipment and it's going to, let's say, supplement an incubator or supplement a research lab to get the equipment, can it be used in that capacity instead of into your own facility?
I'm not sure about that. I think why don't you and I have a chat offline so we can understand a little bit more.
Thank you.
And one more, Cheryl. John Hennessy, could you unmute, please? You've asked Cheryl to explain what recapture means a bit more. Can you amplify that a little bit?
If you could explain what you meant by recapture and what are the rules on recapture. Is it possible to recapture investments that were made last year, for example? Or is it just that the state will recapture the credit under certain conditions?
Oh yeah, it's just a credit. So if you receive the tax credit from us, say for this example, let's say it's $10,000. There's a 3-year reporting period. So if you file the tax return, you get the credit. But in the 3 years, for example, one of the main rules is that the company that you invested in must remain in Massachusetts for that 3 years. So if they move out of state, for example, that would be a situation where your credit would have to be refunded back to the state. So the $10,000.
What if fewer than 50% of the employees are in the state? Maybe they hire more people out of state.
That is only that's an eligibility criteria only at the time of the investment that was made. So if they grow, I think, and have more employees outside of the state, that wouldn't be a recapture provision. Of course, it's not ideal for us, but that's not part of it.
And what if can you explain the reporting requirements for 3 years? Is that just filing a return?
No, there will be, so MLSC will be sending sort of a survey and a template where you'll have to complete for 3 years. And we'll have a section afterwards that sort of explains what we will be asking. Probably not too burdensome. It's just sort of we'll be asking the investor to report and also the company to report as well. From the investor side, I think it's just confirming that if this was a convertible note investment, for example, that it has converted to equity or it has been paid back, for example. And from the company side, it's sort of confirming that the company is still in Massachusetts and still in business, that type of thing.
To initially apply for the credit, does the company need to fill out some sort of form, or how burdensome is that?
Yes. So there will be an application process for both the investor and the company, and we will vet the eligibility. And that's a good segue into the next sections. So,
Thanks.
Yeah.
That's it for questions.
All right. I think let's try to do some math before we get into the application process. All right. So here are the parameters regarding the tax credit, particularly limit on how much credit can be provided in connection with a qualifying business and an annual maximum. Taxpayer investor may be allowed a credit in connection with up to $125,000 of qualifying investments per qualifying business per year. And up to $250,000 in cumulative qualifying investments for each qualifying business. So in any one taxable year, the total amount of tax credits available to the taxpayer investor shall not exceed $50,000. That is the cap. So for example, Investor A made an investment in MedTech Inc. for $125,000. And MedTech Inc. is located in Boston. This means that Investor A is eligible for 20% tax credit or $25,000 relating to this investment. And please keep in mind, since he's already made the $125,000 worth of investment for this company, if he made a follow-on investment in the same year for MedTech Inc., he would not be eligible for any more tax credits relating to MedTech Inc. However, if the following month, Investor A made an investment in a different company, Diagnostics Inc., for $200,000 with its principal place of business in Cambridge, then Investor A would be eligible for another 20% tax credit. However, only up to $25,000 due to the annual cap of $50,000 limitation between all of the investments. Okay. And as mentioned at the beginning, the program provides an increased tax credit as an additional incentive if the qualifying business that an investor invested in is located in a gateway city. So currently there are 26 of them here in Massachusetts, and they're all listed here. So piggybacking on previous example, if we just made one slight change with the location, if MedTech Inc., if it's instead of located in Boston, it's located in Pittsfield, then Investor A would be eligible for 30% tax credit of $30,500 for MedTech Inc. instead. Okay. Moving on to after the award, here's the annual reporting section. There will be two kinds of annual reporting that will be required here for this program, one from the qualifying business and one from the taxpayer investor. As you can see here, the requirement for reporting is essentially a substantiation to make sure that the business is indeed still in Massachusetts. Confirmation that the investment funds received is used for the investment advancement of the business, as we discussed earlier, and not essentially to be cycled back to the taxpayer investor in one form or another. The reporting by the taxpayer investor is just to confirm with DOR how much has been claimed on the tax return that year, and see how much still needs to be set aside as a carry forward in the following 3 years. And hence that's the duration of the reporting term. And again, the reporting goes hand in hand with the compliance and the potential recapture of the program should the business cease to operate or move out of Massachusetts. Any questions here?
Shelley has a question about having more than one investor qualify. And also, I believe you already answered that an investor can apply for more than one investment for more than one company. But can you amplify on more than one investor in a syndicated effort?
Yes, so there are no limits to the number of investors who can apply for a tax credit in conjunction to one company. So if one company has a syndicate of 5 investors, all 5 are welcome to apply and get their prorated amount of the tax credit if they're applying as a group, or if they're all applying as an individual, they would each get sort of the 20% of what they put in.
And John Tremblay, could you unmute, please, and ask your question? It sounds pretty specific.
Sure. I lost my power, so I'm on my cell phone here, but hopefully it's coming through okay. Yeah, so specifically, I did claim a credit for one of my investments, but another investment didn't have the cycles to do all the reporting requirements. It was a little bit hairy to navigate for them, and they just didn't have the time to do it. I want to just confirm that they can't fulfill those reporting requirements in 2021, even though my investment was made in 2020. It has. Did I hear that correct? They would have to do the fulfilling of their reporting and my reporting in the year the investment's made, or they can't do it in this current year.
For this program, so the first reporting that we will ask them to do will be the year following the investment, right? So if you made the investment in 2021 and you apply to our program and you get the award from us, the first reporting that we will ask will be at the end of 2022.
Right. So yeah, I'm off by a year. So it was early 2019 was the investment, and that's when they didn't have the cycles to do it.
Right. Yeah, so unfortunately, we can't go back retroactively.
Okay.
So the 2019 investment won't be eligible for this one.
Okay.
And then John has another question about what if he invests in company XYZ 3 times in 1 year?
As long as it stays within that 125,000 per company. Right. So you for our credit purpose, we will provide 20% credit for the first $125,000.
So that's it for questions.
So that didn't really answer my question then, because if I can have more than one syndicated investor, I can't go over 125.
For each investor.
Oh, each investor. So I could do 5 at 125.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. All right. To apply to the program, please visit our website, masslifesciences.com, and under our funding programs page, you will find a page for Angel Investor Tax Credit. Once you land on that page, you will find all the available resources for the program and an Apply Now button, which will link you to our third-party application service provider called SmartSimple. There are two separate applications in there, one for the investor and one for the company. Both applications are not linked, so it can be submitted independently. And if there are multiple investors who are applying for a credit relating to one company, so that was Shelley and Shelley, right? In your question, so the investors will each have to complete an application, but you as a company just have to fill a company application, and we'll match it up. We will consider an application to be complete when there is both one investor and one company have submitted both their portions for the application. They're accepted on a rolling basis, and it is open at this moment with two deadlines to keep in mind. For investments made from the beginning of the calendar year through September 30th. The deadline to submit is October 29th. And then investments made during the last quarter of the year, the deadline to submit is January 14, 2022. Please note that while there are two deadlines, the program will remain open for the second deadline only if the funding cap has not been reached. So essentially, as long as we still have money in the budget. And we will review the applications on a first come, first served basis. We will notify the investor and the companies if the credit has been conditionally approved as we go along. We will bring all of the awards to our board of directors meeting at the end of February 2022 to be formally approved and certified as required by the regulation. And then we will provide you with a formal agreement for you to execute. And that's the agreement that we will provide to the Department of Revenue so that they can administer the tax credit. And again, you must claim it on your 2021 tax return next year. That's due April 15, 2022, or at least that's the schedule for now. Okay, so please remember again, due to the role that MLSC play as administrator for the program, largely what we do here is just vet the information submitted and make sure that all of the eligibility criteria, as we mentioned below and we outlined, have been satisfied. There are sample applications available for you to review on our webpage under the Angel Investor Tax program. And here is a listing of documents that you will need as well to upload in the application to substantiate your eligibility. I've linked the certificates of good standings here to the websites where you can directly obtain them. So later, once we send out the materials to you, you will be able to use this as a checklist when completing the application and get to the Department of Revenue or Secretary of State's website quickly. Okay. I thought in the next few slides that I just sort of discuss more of a technical FAQ on the application system itself. And we'll point out the section regarding public disclosure and how to mark the application as proprietary and confidential. But again, before we move on into more sort of the tech aspect, any questions about the application process?
John Hennessy is asking, does an investor need to requalify each year?
Yes.
Okay, I think that's it.
Okay.
Let's move.
Right. Once you click on the Apply Now button on our website, you'll be directed to SmartSimple, and this is sort of the landing page that you will see. Investors, if you are new to our program, you will have to click where it says investor registration at the bottom left here and create a username and password to log in. If you've applied last year to our program, you can just log in with the same username and password. Same thing for companies. If you are new to MLSC, you can click on the applicant registration button and create a login as well. Once you log in, if you are new, you will need to complete a short profile first. And then after that, you will see this landing page. Again, apologies, this is small. Let me see if I can, oh, that doesn't work. You will see sort of like a page where all the applications that you can potentially apply to, and depending on the time of the year where we do launch a variety of programs, this page could get extremely long. Traditionally in the fall, we launch a variety of capital programs, and in the springtime, we launch our internship program is open for companies who are interested in taking interns, and also for students as well to apply. One of our flagship programs, the Mass Next Gen for women entrepreneurs, will be launched in the spring as well. So they could be a very long page here full of programs that, that a company can apply to. So it's the funny thing is people just tend to forget to scroll down and see if they had applied and started a draft application. The applications are just reflected at the very bottom, and so oftentimes I get a panic phone call or a panic email saying my application's missing, but it's really, you just have to scroll down all the way to the bottom and click on the application that you've created as a draft. New applications, once you find the applicable program, you can just start a new application by clicking the green plus button there. So for the again, for the Angel Investor Tax program, you will see that there are two separate places. So for a qualified company, there will be one link, and then an investor one will be another link. Okay. Either way, once you find the application that's applicable to you, the application itself is organized by tabs, as you can see here. As an example, and you can toggle back and forth between tabs, and just make sure to hit Save Draft at the bottom here before you move from or exit out of it. And I just wanted to point out to you here, I've highlighted the public disclosure tab with a notice regarding the Massachusetts Public Records Act, as well as language regarding the trade secrets exemption. We ask that you check the box to identify here that the information is proprietary. This will then allow us to seek the statutory trade secrets exemption clause should anyone ever request materials. We will let the investor or the company know that there has been a public records request, and we will strive to redact sensitive business information before the materials are turned over to the requester. The business plan and financial forecast would likely fall under this exemption, so we would seek to keep that confidential. Please also note that our general counsel at MLSC is the sole authority within the center for determining the applicability or the assertion of an exemption, and that determination may be reviewed by the supervisor of records from Secretary of State's office. In the event that information you have identified as proprietary, trade secret, and or confidential must be disclosed, we will give you prompt notice so that you may seek any remedies available to you prior to the disclosure. Again, if you have any questions on the related materials today, please visit our website. That is the best place for you to find all the resources regarding this program. or contact us if you have any specific questions regarding your situation. And the best way to reach us is by email at angeltax@masslabsciences.com. Okay, with that, I will open for final questions. Thank you so very much for attending, and we look forward to hearing from all of you soon.
Thank you, Cheryl. I actually have a question that you and I have talked about before. And since I see that there are companies here and investors here, I want to make sure that we cover it. Do you provide any introductions to companies, between companies and angel investors?
Yes, we do have a few angel groups that we have good relationships with. And so they're sort of, they have their own sort of eligibility criteria of what kinds of companies they're interested in to connect. So if we see that there is a matching, or if someone's interested in introduction, it's certainly something that we can facilitate.
And is that something you do once a company has gone through your application process, or is that something, is that something that, how would you, what's the process involved?
They can contact us, and yes, if they're interested in this program particularly, yes, submit the application relating to the qualifying business or the company side, and we can discuss and proceed from there.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else have a question to ask? I have some others, but I don't want to take advantage of my role as moderator. Please unmute and say hello and ask your question if you have one. Okay, I'll ask another one then. Can you talk about, are there any limits to how many times an investor can apply?
No, again, not in terms of numbers. So if an investor invested multiple times in, in multiple companies, as long as they fall within that parameter of 125,000 per company or 250 cumulatively, if they invested in, say, 5 companies at about, $20,000 each, please come and apply for all of them. Should you and the qualifying business feel that this is a good program for you, so there's no limit in that regard.
Okay, great. Can you talk about how applications are reviewed?
Yes, so it is reviewed timing wise. It's on a first come, first served basis. So please do submit your applications to us as early as possible, and not a rush near the deadline. It is first comes, first serve. And what we generally do is just review the materials that are submitted to make sure it's complete and yet you satisfy the eligibility criteria.
And so I know you mentioned that the business plans have been a sticking point. Is there, I'm assuming here you give feedback and give people a chance to, on the company side, revise? Yeah.
So there won't be, the only time that things get hairy is when, as the deadline nears and and we have to close the program year, where we won't be able to potentially reach out to everyone if there is a lot of applications to revise an application once the deadline has passed. But certainly throughout the year, there is opportunity if you're missing something and things needs to be clarified or revised, that there's more opportunity there. That's why I advise everybody to just submit the applications throughout the year, so it's not sort of so we're not hitting sort of the deadline.
It's not an emergency at the end.
Exactly.
So John Hennessy has a technical question here. John, please jump in if I'm getting this wrong, but you're asking, does the investor need to have a certificate of good standing from the Department of Revenue?
Yes. And we provide the direct link here. So as an individual, there is a link for an investor to just go and obtain it. It's essentially, it's a certification that from DOR's perspective that you've been current and you're in good standing with the DOR in order to receive more tax credit.
John, I think you're asking a follow-up, but you're muted.
Do you call a specific number, or how do you get DOR to give you that certificate?
Oh, it's just online. So let me see. So if you click on this link, it'll bring you to their online page where you can just enter your information, and then it's a pretty automated system generated. I think if you put in your email there where you want the certificate to be sent to you, and you should be able to get that, I think, within 24 or 48 hours.
Thanks.
And this is a good opportunity for me to mention that these slides will be available on our website along with the recording, and Lisa has put the link to that page in the chat. It's our Startup Know-How Talks page. So Shelley Amster is asking whether no bias to certain technologies or areas of interest. So I'm assuming within that list you want people to stay within that list that you presented at the beginning of the slide. But
yes, I mean, it has to be within that list because that's our life sciences statute. So we can't award a company something that's outside of that umbrella. But no biases. All life sciences companies are welcome.
Shelley, does that answer your question?
Yeah, it was more of the fact that Mass Life Science Center seems to be investing more in biologics and gene therapy and not in other areas as much. So I wasn't sure if there was a leaning towards certain technologies they prefer to do these things with. That's all.
Yeah, not for this program. I mean, we do our different programs by the center target different things. And so certainly we've had other programs that are specifically more prone to sort of cell and gene therapy manufacturing growth in Massachusetts. But for this program specifically, the intent is to spur angel investing in small life sciences companies in Massachusetts. There's no restrictions in terms of sector.
Thank you.
So you mentioned, Cheryl, you mentioned that that when you run out of money, you run out of money. What is the budget for this round?
It's $500,000. Yeah, and again, last year we were close to it, and we managed to deploy 474,000. So.
But you didn't run out.
We didn't run out. So, but hopefully we get, we keep growing, and this year hopefully we get more interest, and certainly please come apply.
That's awesome. So that sort of leads to I want to check to see if there are any other questions from anyone here.
I have one more question, and that is, can the company apply before they get an investor to make it more attractive to the investors?
Yes, definitely. You can submit the application independently. It won't be considered complete, right, until they have an investor who applied for the tax credit as well. But yes, they can apply, and I certainly would encourage any company who is thinking of fundraising to an angel, and if they're approaching an angel investor, certainly mention this to them and say that the angel investor could potentially get a tax credit in investing in that company.
So if a life science company is applying to our group, it would make a lot of sense to encourage them to pre-qualify as an attractive element in terms of raising money.
Absolutely.
Great.
Great question. So we've just got a couple of minutes left. So I want to remind everyone again that the slides are going to be available along with the recording and the link Lisa has put in the chat. And so Cheryl, you know, what would success look like in the longer term? Well, and this year for you at the Mass Life Sciences Center, and in terms of getting, you know, keeping this program going, getting it renewed for next year. How can we help you?
Great. Thank you, Karen. I think certainly success would mean a lot of investors and companies interested and submitting applications, of course. But also, I think a lot of interest in a variety of sectors, a lot of interest from a variety of geography as well. We would love to see as many gateway cities applicants apply, and that, you know, investors are making and looking at, you know, companies who are located outside of Greater Boston in general. Certainly, I think one of the biggest reward for us is if this program inspires new connections, right? Like you mentioned earlier, John, it's, you know, it's net new. So these are, you know, companies who are pre-qualified and certainly who are in the midst of fundraising. So these are sort of new transactions that are occurring and new investments that are being put into the community.
That's wonderful to hear. And speaking for as someone from out in Western Massachusetts, I notice every time the Western Massachusetts cities on the Gateway Cities list, Springfield, Holyoke, Chicopee, I believe Pittsfield is on there. You know, if there's anything I can do to help, I want to do that. So thank you very much for bringing this information to
No problem.
Miles and partnering with us.
Yes, we'd love to see applications from all those cities in Western Mass. We'd welcome them. Again, please, you know, contact us, contact me at that AngelTax at Massachusetts, AngelTax at masslifesciences.com email address, and we can chat offline, and let me know.
Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
Lisa?